We'll get started. So happy Tuesday, guys. I cannot believe we are in the final stretch of April. We are due weather. Yesterday was pretty nice, eh? Kids bouncing off the walls, wanting to be outside. I'm just going to go through and double check and mute everybody so that way if you're putzing around in your background, we don't hear you. And then if you want to, I'm hoping this call will be very interactive. I know lots of you guys have good stuff to share. I compiled the questions that got loaded into my post the other day about doing this week as a Q&A. And I think what I would like to do going forward for calls of some sort, and I'll give this a little bit more thought, but I was listening to a call with a bunch of Blue Diamonds that were just kind of expressing their struggle with knowing how to support people at all different stages of their business. And I thought this is probably very relevant to grab a hold of a thought process right at the beginning of anybody's journey in building this business, especially if you're somebody still working full time, that you'll sometimes have this momentum, right, where you're starting a bunch of people off at the same time and you're all learning the same time things together, which was very much what my first year to 2 years was in this business. It was like growing together with everyone, right? We were all sort of figuring out things as we went and learning things together. And I think that even just kind of based on some of the questions that you guys popped in there, is that probably it's very common that many of us start to feel like we don't have a ton of time for our business in some instances, but you've got a lot of different people needing a lot of different things. So this call that I was listening to a couple of weeks ago, it was that kind of struggle that people at Blue and Presidential were feeling. And it really can be felt at any stage where you've got, brand new users, like maybe you've done a bunch of classes and you've got a bunch of customers that you're onboarding and you're supporting those like first basic questions, right? Like, how do I log into my back office, or how do I set up an LRP, or how do I use this oil and that oil, which is the beginning stage of anybody's business, right? Your first pull that you often feel on your time is like the questions from customers. And then you might have people that kind of joined you in your business that are kind of off and running. So you're trying to figure out how to support people that are still needing help, but kind of doing their own thing. And then people that are really stalled and you like start to feel a little bit like, I don't know where to spend my time or how to reach everybody in the right way. Does anybody feel that way currently in their business? Yeah, that's probably not going to go away if it's something that was a big conversation with Blues and Presidentials. So what I'm thinking I'll try, Keely jumped on. Most of you guys know Keely Martinez. She's essentially obsessed. So she has basically structured her month where she does one call at the beginning of the month that just welcomes all the new builders. So it's kind of like a get to know your upline, even if she's not the direct enroller of somebody. If you guys have, somebody that you've onboarded, but you're not really running anything right now that onboards new people. It's not a begin program or going through Empowered Success. It's mostly a like, hey, you're new here. Let's kind of show you around some of the tools that you can plug into, some of the groups and communities that you can be a part of, and just sort of welcome people to the journey. She does one call that's like a Q&A week. She does another call where she has a guest speaker come on for her team to learn from. And I kind of forget what the fourth one was. I just posted it in a group. So anyways, I'm going to kind of feel around a structure like that so that, every week we can sort of have something different that we plug into. But if you guys are feeling that way as well, and you still want to be like the main face and you want to be connected to your team, especially those of you guys that are having people join you that you don't know, like maybe you've got, a user or a sharer that's a few levels down and they've decided to start enrolling people, and you've got, names and faces popping up that you don't know. You may still be like really craving that connection time with them. So I'll try this out. And if this is something that you want to kind of mimic as well, where you do like a once a month welcome to the new builders, maybe a Q&A, maybe you're partnering with a Crossline and you can sort of duplicate that. Just one of those ideas to throw out there so that each week you're sort of touching on a specific different group of people that at least once a month your team can sort of tap into. Awesome, Amanda. So anyways, today will be Q&A. I thought that, I can't always read minds or know what you guys are wanting to chat about and hear about. And I don't know how many of you that posted an actual question are on live, but I will post the recording of this. But I thought we could have some good discussion. Hopefully those of you guys that are on here will chime in and share some feedback as well. And Kaylee, I had mentioned to you that I'd love for you to chime in. I just need to remember which question it was that you had commented on. If you remember, go ahead and unmute yourself. Was it
Somebody asked, because they were stalled at Elite, how to get builders.
Yeah. And kind of all of the questions were they can kind of be lumped into one probably good juicy topic. So you kind of mentioned having felt this way and sort of busted through some walls. So let's talk about those people that have been building for a few months. They're at Elite, feeling a little stuck. I'm just going to pass it right over to you, and you can share sort of what you've been experiencing.
Okay. Well, as you know, because I private messaged you a couple months ago, I was really stuck at Elite, and it was something that I had to kind of go through myself, because it was a scenario where I pretty much built most of my legs to Premier on my own. I do have 2 sharers. They do build, but it's not something that's constant. So it was me doing mass amounts of enrollments on my own and plugging people in where I needed the volume. And I just kind of looked at other people that are doing this business, and I was like, oh my God, it's so much easier for them, because sometimes, you get off starting your business, and then all of a sudden you get like 2 rock star builders, and you're not having to do as much of the groundwork. So I was kind of sitting there and looking at people and being like, oh my God, how easy is it for them? And for me, I'm doing spending a lot of time away from my family, doing a lot of classes, enrolling a ton of people just to do this. And I felt like I really needed help. I felt like I was, stuck at a position where I'm like, I can't go much farther doing all of it on my own. So I kept thinking that to myself, and I kept thinking, why do I not have a builder that's going to rock a leg that I don't have to worry about? And I know I messaged you and I was like, Susan, we need to talk, because I'm stuck to the point where I was pretty much just contemplating just staying at Elite and having my oils paid for, and that just be done with it, because it was just getting to be too much time away from my family and too much work. And when I messaged you, it was the next day, and I listened to a podcast, and I can be honest when I say I have no idea what that was. I don't know what triggered in me, but I remember before you even messaged me, I messaged you back and I said, never mind, it's on me to answer this question, not on you. And something switched in my mind, and I started to do a lot of manifestation and a lot of saying, I am going to get a builder. I'm going to stop looking at this in a negative way, and I'm going to start looking at this in a positive way. And I'm going to fix the issues on myself as to why my team is getting a little bit stagnant and why I'm not attracting builders. So I had to do this kind of soul searching and mind switch. Instead of looking at other people's organization and being like, oh, it must be nice to have it a little bit easier, I was looking at my own and being like, where can I find out of the people that I have someone that would be interested in building? So I really dug in deep, and I started to look at the people that were ordering often, and then I started to plant little seeds in their minds, by letting them know, there's a way to get your oils paid for. And I was just a little bit more focused on actually turning some of my users into builders. And I was also focused on being more present in speaking about building this business at classes, because that was always something that I shied away from, because at that point I would figure, once you've done an entire class, it's not, there's not enough time. People aren't interested in doing the business. You're going to scare people away. I had all these negative thoughts about doing the business. And I didn't even know I really had those thoughts. It was weird, because I love doing the business, but I had these thoughts that I was going to scare people. And also, my best friend does this too, Rochelle. And she also said to me, which is something that kind of rang home, Kaylee, you teach a class different than I've ever seen anybody teach a class. So you might actually be intimidating people to think that they need to know everything that you know in order to do this business, and they're not there yet. So that was also something I kind of had to change a little bit about the way I was presenting how to do the business and what's needed to do the business. And when I had this mindset and this manifestation, and I was like, you know what, my next class, I'm going to get a builder. My very next class, after I put my mind to it, I got a builder, and she's a rock star. And then it was so funny, my next couple classes, all of these people just started to come out of the woodwork. Now I have 7. So I had to change the way I was thinking about it. And I had to do that work on my own. I couldn't expect Susan to tell me how I had to change my mindset in order to get builders. So I think that it's just a way of changing the thought that you have in your mind to something more positive. So I don't know if that's what you wanted to hear. You put me on the spot.
That's so true. It's like manifesting and affirmations and that kind of stuff it's so hard sometimes to explain how all that works, right? I'm totally fascinated by it, and I actually don't spend a lot of time trying to figure out the why and the how, because my personality is just naturally optimistic. So I'll touch a little bit on some of these questions about where that has served me in this business. But if that's not a skill set that comes naturally to you, if you're somebody who just the glass half empty piece of a situation comes first to your mind, or you just are always expecting the worst case scenario, then this is something that's going to take time to learn how to control and overcome, right? And it is such a sometimes unspoken but like so powerful piece of our business that just doesn't sometimes get taught enough, or it sometimes has to be on you to have that moment of, okay, it's not a magic sauce. It's not a magic recipe. It's so much about mindset and attraction that makes this business work incredible for some people and really fall flat for others. And I spent a lot of months in my business where I would just like rack my brain and try so hard to figure out why this business wouldn't work for some people. And I still find it, I get caught up in those thoughts, like, why can't I just like say the right thing or like have the right advice to give somebody so that this will finally start to work. But so much of what attracts into our business is what we're spending the time thinking about, right?
I feel, Susan, it wasn't like, I've always been a very optimistic person. It wasn't that I lost, that feeling. It was, I was too focused on the feeling of being tired, and I was so focused on the feeling of, I don't have a builder right now. It's not that I didn't think that I could. I was focusing more on the feeling I was having, the negative feelings towards it. So as soon as I switched that, and I was like, no more am I going to look at other people's organizations and be like, see, it's easier for them. Yeah. No more am I going to have my pity party. I'm going to go out and find a builder. As soon as I did that, it was like, bam, it changed.
Can you think back a little more specifically about what was different about you in that next class? Was there something different that you said, or what was the shift for you in how you presented a class? Especially for Rochelle to have pointed out that you do a class in a unique way that people might be intimidated. So what did you change out?
I think I didn't speak as much to the science because I'm medically and science mind. So I didn't overly spend a lot of time in that area, and that gave me time to speak about building. So it's not like I'm going to change the way, because I think my unique way is something that may attract people more on a medical side. Mm-hmm. It's not that I changed that. It's more that I went into that class being like, one of these people is going to build the business. And by the end of the class, the girl said, you know what, because she had been using oils, I want to do this business. And I was like, fine. And every single person in your class is going to enroll under you today. It was like, she looked at me and I said, I think you should do this. And she was like, I think you're right. And normally I was tiptoeing around that. Normally I wouldn't be so upfront about that. Normally I would be shied away until somebody kind of asked me, because I didn't know how to say, no, you need to do this. This is your time. So I became more confident in speaking about the business. And that was, that was the shift, because when you start speaking about the business in a more confident way, you're showing people that, okay, she's really confident about this, and I don't need to know everything that she knows right now, and I can learn as I go. And that was the problem. I was kind of showing people that they needed to know everything I know in order to do the business, and they don't. And so giving them that confidence that you can do it right now and we'll learn together, it was a shift. It was a huge shift that happened. Like now it seems like all my enrollers want to be builders right away. And it was just, and then now I have this shift where I'm like, what do I do with all of these builders? So there's another problem.
Good problem to have. Mm-hmm. You're right, though. That mindset shift, like it trickles out in confidence. I can think of being in a class where if you went into the class thinking, why do I not have a builder yet? You would totally not be on the wavelength to accept somebody's cues that they were curious about the business, because you're busy thinking about why isn't anybody doing this business with me?
That is exactly right.
Somebody will. You're so on top. Have you guys had that experience that when you're manifesting something positive, you're so on the ball to accept somebody's cues of where the conversation can go? Absolutely. I promise you it works. I can't explain why. But Kaylee just, what a perfect example. And there's that Jim Rohn quote too, right? Don't wish it were easier, wish you were better. There will always forever be a million businesses and a million leaders to compare yourself to. Don't wish that you had their experience. Like, look at what's in front of you and own it. Like, where do I upgrade? Where do I need to get uncomfortable to face this next hurdle? That's awesome. I feel like you need to record a whole webinar on the magic of manifesting.
Oh, geez, I haven't even mastered it yet, but it definitely works. You just got to change your mindset.
Awesome. Has anyone else had an experience recently where they consciously had a shift in the way they were viewing things going in their biz, or maybe something outside of your business?
So yesterday, how we were talking,
yep.
I went to bed and I was laying in bed and I was just thinking, you're so right. Like, I just need to shift my energy to accepting all the amazingness that is already going on everywhere in my team, and just that it has so much potential and growth possibility, and just and then it was funny because I just started thinking about, and I've been doing this manifesting stuff for on and off for probably about 2 years. I read Abraham Hicks' book, I don't remember what it's called off the top of my head right now, Asking You'll Receive. And my mom is big into this too. She's always telling me, Amanda, think about throwing your nets into the deep and bringing in all of the goodness in your life and attracting that to you all the time. And so she's always telling me this, and not to think for 2 seconds about the things that you don't want. And so when I was laying in bed last night, that's what I did. I was just thinking about bringing in all of the amazing things that I need in my life, while like acknowledging all the things that are already there. And it was so funny. I woke up to a message from a girl that I'd been connecting with about 6 months ago. And I think she just wasn't ready. Like, at the time, she was really, really interested in the business, but she was going to school. And so she sent me a message and she said, I'm done school and I'm ready to get started. And it was just funny because she wants to build, and like that's her main goal in getting started. And I just laughed a little bit, because I do find a lot of times that is the way manifesting works. And in my life, in like particular, like even silly things. I was listening to that podcast that you just posted, and she was talking about thinking about little things like the cup of coffee, that part she was saying.
Yeah.
And like last week I was thinking, you know what? I just would love flowers. We need flowers in this house today. My husband came home with tulips. Like, just like little things like that, I feel like always happen in my life. And sometimes you forget, especially when you kind of get in a funk about that kind of stuff. But anyways, I do totally believe like that this stuff is very, very much a part of our life. We just sometimes don't know to open the door to that and think about it. And I think it's such cool stuff.
That's incredible. That's really incredible. Thank you for pointing out that piece of her podcast too. So I did link it up in the biz group. For those of you guys that are on Instagram, you can find Manifestation Babe, and her name is Catherine Zenkina. I literally just stumbled upon her on the weekend by listening to a podcast with Chris Harder for the love of money. But as Amanda mentioned, she talks about like if this whole idea of asking for what you want in life and feeling gratitude for what's already in front of you is new to you. Because I remember feeling that same way too. The first, like when I was getting close to being ready to commit to growing to Diamond, it was like so out in left field for me to actually like put that kind of wish out into the universe. But what Catherine talks about in her podcast that Amanda mentioned is like start really small, right? I think she even said something silly like, I'm so grateful for my fingernails and for my fingers, and just like get a feel for how that feels, right? When you wake up in the morning, I'm grateful for my soft pillow, or I'm grateful for the sun that's peeking through the curtains. Just that like ease into gratitude, and then seeing how that feels for a little while before you go all out and request that dream builder or that person who, you know, you would be the piece to you creating new momentum in your business. So thank you for sharing that. That's awesome. I'm so glad that you woke up to such a beautiful affirmation of your pre-bedtime thoughts. Anybody else? Anybody who this is like totally new territory for? They've never thought about putting a big ask out into the universe for their business? Okay, so we'll carry on, but thank you, Kaylee and Amanda, for chiming in on that topic. That, you know, that'll kind of sum up a lot of like what you guys posted for questions. So, you know, we had questions about getting out of funks and what to do when our warm market dries up, and noticing a shift in, you know, people not being as interested in coming to classes, and people not responding to messages, like so common. Do you guys feel like you're the only person in the world who like puts messages and follow-up out there that people just flat out do not acknowledge? I was talking about this on the weekend to my mom, right? And we were just talking about, you know, how my mom and dad were saying, like, as they grew up and even now, like, it's just unheard of that you wouldn't at least acknowledge back an email or a message, like even if you don't have time to respond or you're not interested. You know, so that kind of speaks to like their upbringing, right? And then we're in this world of like information and offers and emails, and things are coming at us like left, right, and center, right? And often, I know I'm guilty of it. You're, you know, in a parking lot or you're at a stoplight and you look down and you see a message or an email and you just don't have time in that moment to respond. So when that happens, like, what, a week later, sometimes 2 weeks later, or a few days later, you're like, oh my God, I totally forgot to reply. Or so I think that's just the age that we're in right now. And it's, again, a mindset thing where we have to just totally disconnect our desire to continue to show up with value for people and not have any attachment to getting a reply, right? Because oftentimes it's just, it wasn't the right time for them. They saw the message at an inopportune time to reply. They weren't feeling the vibe the way you were feeling the vibe, but it doesn't mean it's not coming. So many of you guys on this call right now have been in this business long enough to speak multiple stories of the fact of people showing up randomly in your inbox or saying it's the right time when, you know, you felt like it was the right time 6 months ago, but they had no time for you, right? But then they do show back up when you're consistent. So again, it is that piece of making sure that you're building enough of a toolkit where you have cool things to send them that are really not like touching the word follow up or, hey, I'm just checking in about your interest of the oils, or no, you wanted to like enroll at that class 6 months ago. Cause that's when it feels gross and yucky, right? So for the time being, pull what you can from our Whole Fit toolkit. But if you have time to sit down and kind of brand something yourself, or, you know, even just writing out a few of your favorite diffuser recipes and popping that into somebody's email box when you feel like it's the 5th time you're trying to follow up without a response, right? Just being that person who continues to care and deliver value goes a long way. And it's what the majority of people in our business are not willing to do, right? You've probably all heard that it's like, you know, between 5 and 12 follow-ups by the time most people are ready to jump on board with you. So 80% of people are not going past that first or second follow-up. And I'm guilty of that in tons of instances where I just haven't tracked follow-up properly, or I, you know, in a real quick, brief, like 3-minute flash that I had, I followed up with somebody and didn't think about them again for several months, and I lost that commitment to following up. So, Kaylee, I'll come to your message when you talked about having time to manage groups online, right? And feeling like you post with consistency and then you don't, remembering where you saw things. So I'm totally open to anybody chiming in on this. If you're starting to get the groove of maybe a product group and a business group. But for me, when I started to feel like I was responsible now for showing up and providing things in different groups, I had to start scheduling it out. So some weeks that would look like taking 2 hours on a Saturday morning when the sun was bright, and I would snap pictures of my oils and make some notes about how I used them, and then using a scheduler like Hootsuite or CinchShare or Facebook scheduler. And if you know you've got a busy week that you're coming up against, just popping in a post per day, right? Just so that you've got that consistency. And then the tracking too, like if you lose track of conversations, like I'm, again, for sure guilty of this, figure out the system that works, whether it's a pad of paper or a notebook in your car or a Google Doc that you create. There's nothing quite like not having stuff documented to make you really feel like you have nobody to follow up with and nobody to invite to a class and nobody to enroll. But I promise you, you're probably having more conversations and more experiences that are potential leads than you realize. And I find when I get back into being really committed with like writing down every time I've been asked a question or somebody has, come to a class but didn't enroll, when I get really diligent about tracking it, I realize, okay, I do still have a juicy amount of people here to work with. And like the whole follow-up and delivering value, that could almost be like a full-time gig on its own, right? And I was starting to listen to a webinar that Alice Abba had recorded about like sales training and how we are in sales, right? And she had been asked a question by Amanda. She had asked a question about how many of you have oil selling time scheduled into your week, right? And I'm like, oh, that is a really good way to look at it, right? Because as we get busy, there's Facebook groups to post and things to watch and people's webinars to tune into and recordings and just everything, right, that's available to us. But how much of the time that we're like showing up online is actually leading towards a potential sale? And that was a huge wake up question to me just yesterday afternoon, that I'm like not showing up in my groups enough with education, with ongoing continued education, the same way and the same level of excitement that I had in those first 6 months, where every time I opened a bottle, it was a new experience and it was super cool. I need to dial back into what that feels like. And so what I would say to you guys, when you're starting to feel a little bit stale, or like you haven't got, don't necessarily have people to invite to classes or to just be building your contact list, again, own that feeling and figure out what controllable do you have, because we don't control who answers, who doesn't answers, who shows up, who doesn't show up, any of that. All we control is how we show up, right? So I would challenge each of you guys over the next couple of weeks, if you're feeling a little bit stale, is to treat like the next 3 or 4 days as if you were a brand new oil user, and ask yourself, how many like cool experiences are you giving yourself with your oils these days, right? Because we can get into those ruts where we take them for granted and they're there and we love them, of course, but we're not using them with that like same excitement that we were as brand new oil customers. So commit to like 3 or 4 days of real, true excitement about your oils, and grabbing a camera, grabbing like the Notes app in your phone, or just sitting down and firing it off to Facebook, and start to like be the person who's excited again about oil use, and really challenge yourself and ask, have you been showing up with education and experiences for people to learn from again? Because I find when I'm starting to feel a little bit flat in those areas, it's because I've forgotten that I am the oil educator. I am the person who needs to be having daily experiences and sharing that the exact same way that I did in the beginning when I had massive momentum. Anybody else want to chime in on like what they kind of do when they're feeling a little bit pulled, between showing up in groups and following up and creating busyness? Jen, what about you?
Personally, I like just to go back to the basics again. Like, I'm kind of feeling that right now in my business, and I just started my Blue Diamond leg, so that's kind of forced me to just go back to basics, like sampling people, posting simple things on how we're using them in the home, and like you said, just getting that momentum back again, and starting back with my new builders. I find you do get busy in the day-to-day stuff and things kind of slide and the day gets past. But yeah, just starting, I would just say starting off with the basics again, posting and sampling and just keep it simple.
Yeah. Never forget that what started your business with good momentum is what will carry you as far as you want to take this, which is really like just being not the oil expert, but the visible oil go-to person, right? And we definitely are probably all guilty of falling away from that because you're working with sharers now, or you're helping somebody else launch their business and doing their classes for them. So what I would say for you guys that posted, anything to do with people not showing up and having slumps and the whole stuck thing is to really like shift your language and shift your mindset and look at your business as having seasons, right? Because the longer that you get stuck on the nobody gets back to me, nobody comes to my classes, I can't find a builder, whatever it is that's just kind of coming up subconsciously, whether you even realize it or not, will be what your experience is, right? But when we just recognize that there are seasons, there are totally seasons for me where I cannot get anybody to host a class for me. And seasons where I get really wrapped up in just helping the people that want to learn about their business. And then I'm like, oh, but over here I have nobody to enroll because I haven't spent time. Like it's always a constant game of just editing and analyzing your time and figuring out what is it that you're experiencing in your business is probably where your mindset has been. And just to recognize it as a season, right? Like maybe it is a season of people not coming out to classes or not hosting or booking. So what's in front of you right now in your organization that you can create a new season with? Maybe that's going back and looking through your back office and looking for people that are on LRP that have been just doing like 30 and 40 PV orders. If you've got like a handful of those, maybe there's a season of a couple of weeks where you're just getting back to educating about a really cool loyalty rewards program. Your back office can tell you a ton of stories if we take the time to actually dig in and see what people's purchasing history is telling us. Look for the people that have been doing 100 PV orders or getting their oil of the month but have never come out to anything that you've like done about the business or have never expressed an interest that you could maybe point out an opportunity to help them start getting their oils paid for. Those people in your back office that are doing the 100 PV orders would probably gladly host a class because they love their oils enough that they are placing good size orders. They've probably got people that they could hook you up with, and you could point out an opportunity for the business for them.
Susan?
Yeah.
You've mentioned two things that have brought up a question for me. Do you mind if I ask?
For sure.
Okay, so I find two things that you've mentioned. One, I'm not sure how much support I should be giving my builders because I seem to be teaching a ton of classes for each one.
Okay.
So what are your thoughts on that? And number two, I have sent out samples worldwide, literally, and never got anything back from any samples I've sent, even with follow-ups. So do you have any insight on those two questions?
Okay. The ones that you're teaching classes for, are you like teaching multiple classes for the same people? Give me a specific example.
So when I get a new builder, I usually, my thought is if you want to be a builder, I want you to book 4 classes in 30 days.
Yeah.
So that's what I tell them. And then I usually end up teaching all 4 of those classes because they're not comfortable doing it yet. So that's a lot of me teaching their classes. Nobody taught a class for me ever, not one time. So I kind of feel like at what point do I say, and how do I say, okay, it's your turn now. Like I need to know, like, what do you guys do with teaching for others?
I for myself will usually say the first class I will 100% do for you, right? I want you to see a full class and be comfortable. If we're going to do a second one, I will maybe open it and close it, but I want you to be the one who talks about the oils. Third class, you're going to do the whole thing. Know that I'm here to jump in anytime you give me that look, like help me out, and set the expectation that like you will commit up to 3 classes with somebody, but by that third one, they need to do it and you're hands off. Does that feel comfortable? Does anybody else have anything similar or different at this point?
I do the same as you, Susan.
Okay. Yeah. And you'll find that if you like look over to them across the living room, right? And you're like, hey, Kaylee, tell me how you're using lemon. It's just that like push for them to start being like vocal and sharing their stories in front of their people. And then before you know it, they've taken the reins and they're doing the class.
Okay.
We just have to give them the opportunity, right?
Mm.
Because again, are you a perfectionist?
Yes.
Yes. So you probably feel that responsibility of like taking care of this group of people and wanting them to have a perfect class experience. So that'll be uncomfortable for you, right? To have to say, okay, that like the way that so-and-so starts talking about On Guard may not be exactly how I say it, right? But we just have to let them
right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And what about just sampling via mail? How do you get people after you've spent money to sample and shipped it? Like I have shipments going to Costa Rica, Barbados, like Australia. I have a lot of samples out there, but not one from anything I've mailed has ever come back to me, even with constant follow-up.
How are you finding these people? What are the connections to begin with?
Usually IG.
Oh, okay. Okay. Are you working at building a relationship with that person, like in the meantime, like outside of oils?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Can I just ask, is IG Instagram? Sorry,
Yes.
Okay, we're good. I'm back in the game.
Insta, IG, the gram. Yeah, I've had the same experience too. I wouldn't say that I've had like an abundance of stuff, but I've definitely spent money to ship things to people, and it never, oftentimes if you put out a blast that you're sending something out for free, people will for sure raise their hand before giving much thought of how committed they are to the actual experience. Just keep all we control, right, is just continuing to build the relationship and building the trust. I have definitely experienced, I did a call with some of our higher level leaders yesterday where I was just kind of talking about my own experience with, doing trade shows in England, and realizing after, a couple of years of doing it that it's really tricky to build that relationship with somebody you spend 2 or 3 minutes talking with, right? They move on with life. Same thing with Instagram. It takes a while. I think that we sometimes look at people that are building online and think that they've got it easy, but again, far longer process to build a relationship of trust than it is spending an hour in somebody's living room hearing about a class. So it's patience. It's continue to be visible, because what I always tell myself is at some point oils will be of true interest to so-and-so. I want my name to be the first one they think of when they are finally ready to take the plunge, right? We just enrolled a girl this weekend that we met a year ago, and I've just literally had to kind of let go of any expectation that she was ever going to enroll with me, but I stayed engaged with her as not a friendship, but just relevant, right? Like I comment on her posts, she comments on mine. So that familiarity has grown over the year. And now in England, like what Dan has realized, he did this show in Manchester on the weekend. When we were there a year ago, it was like people would come up and they'd be like, yeah, my yoga teacher used an oil on me in class. So they were like starting to be familiar. A year later, everybody knows about doTERRA. Everybody's got a friend doing it, right? But this girl, lo and behold, came back to me when it was time to enroll. So again, when people come to that like position of it's my time to purchase, we have so many purchasing options in the world in general, right? And think about your own habits and who you're drawn to. You're probably drawn to that person who has been loyal to you, who has continued to like either answer your questions, or if they're like ignoring you on the doTERRA front, they've still seen you online. They know that you're consistent and passionate and committed to what you do. So just stay the course. All we control is what we do, right? But you'll find that the people on your team that get really stalled or hung up are the ones that take it so personally that they're like, I sent out 5 packages and nobody's enrolled. So then they just stop posting about doTERRA. They get so caught up in their head, they just disappear from their business for like 2 or 3 months. That's so detrimental, right? Like people are watching us. They are so watching to make sure that we are committed to what we're doing. And that's all we can own, right? Is how committed we are to the journey. And just sometimes the time will be right. Sometimes it's going to take 2 years, and sometimes it'll never go anywhere. So I don't know. Anybody else have any thoughts about things they've learned about sampling people and sending things out where you get not a lot of engagement back?
I think, Susan, your whole thing about never giving up. Like, I'm also in the same boat where I sampled people and then years later they come back. So about always being out there and always being like that first person that they think about, or even people who maybe you sampled that are never ready are going to refer you to somebody they know because they know that you're doing it and that you're out there. And I've had that happen before where somebody got me a class and I didn't even know he knew me, but he's on my face. He's a Facebook friend and literally sent me a screenshot of a girl, and that's how I got a class and enrollment. So I think that just know that if you sample somebody today doesn't mean that next week or next month they're going to enroll with you, but eventually maybe they will. And as long as you're consistent and once in a while, like, don't be like creepy about it, but once in a while just like, hey, I was thinking about you. How are you doing? And then don't even bring up the oils. And then eventually that person will come around most of the time. It might take a long time, but just don't give up on that.
Yeah.
And I've had people say like, oh, I wasted money like sampling, and that's kind of the name of the game, right? Like we have to invest in our business. And if you sample like 20 people and only 2 people enroll, like that's still a win. And then just kind of keep going off of that.
Yeah. You're right. That's, shifting the language, right, of wasted money or a potential investment to that one key person. This was the other thing I talked about yesterday, is that sometimes there's just not a good measurable for what you're investing into your business, right? We can't always measure at the end of the month or at the end of 6 months, oh, this led to this enrollment or this led to this much volume increase, right? But it's almost like the measurable is us and how we've shifted and changed and what we've learned to like control our thoughts and feelings about things, and how that trickles down to our team is one of the biggest measurables. Is just that, like that positive thinking and that bouncing back and not letting those experiences really define how our business is going to be, right?
Yeah, we're on my team. Actually, today we're launching our second Spoil Yourself campaign. And I find this is really good for new builders because it allows the follow-up. It's easier to follow up with them. So what we do is we find people who are new to doTERRA and we send them 5 samples, and then we plug them into a private Facebook group. And then there's 5 days where we go over each sample quick, like how do you use it? Here's a quick, easy way to like clean with lemon. Here's a quick way to relax with wild orange. And then I will do like a Facebook 101 live class when it's over. And then that way, like all the new builders can reach out to the people who were sampled and be like, hey, how did you like that class? Or, hey, did you use your sample today? And how's it going? And it just makes sampling easier. We had huge success the last time we did it. Some people did, some people didn't. And now we're going to run our second one
So you do that for existing customers?
No, so all my builders were sampling for like brand new people.
Okay.
So we challenge each other, like, all right, find 5 people, sample them these 5 samples, plug them into this group, and then we teach them about their samples and how to use them.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. So we did have
steal that idea.
Yeah, it's really good. It's really good.
Awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Where did that originate from? Because I remember it was circulating around a ton over like the Valentine's, like the whole Spoil Yourself Valentine's. Where can we direct people to plug into where that originated? Does anyone know?
I honestly don't know. A couple of my downline girls actually brought it up to me, and I think they may have added me to a group. But to be honest, once I got the concept, it's a pretty easy concept, right? Like, I also run monthly oil camps for all our new enrollees, so it was really similar to that. So I just get the new builders, I get them like making a video to help them get comfortable with talking on camera and teaching people about the oils, and then I plug everybody in. So I think there is a group, and maybe Ange Dodge just wrote who it was. I saw it. There is a Facebook group somewhere that somebody did one, but
type in the hashtag Spoil Yourself on Instagram too, because you'll see people that are running one this month. If you find the user Essential Oil.sisters. They've done a post recently and it kind of outlines how they're running it. Yeah, it was just posted an hour ago. It'll kind of give you an idea of what people are doing and how you could word it. This one's actually, yeah, this is a really good example of one.
I mean, and not everybody we sampled were in the group and were participating, but I did daily prizes. So at the end of the day, I would do a quick Facebook Live and gift somebody, like I would do, if you commented or whatever, you would get entered into the draw. So it was encouraging people to comment on the post too. And then I'd go on at the end of the day and do like a live video and then give away something. And it was something super cheap, maybe some new samples or maybe like an A to Z guide, or I don't know. It was like something that didn't cost a lot that I could just put like a $1.80 stamp on it and send it in the mail.
Nice. I love that. Mm-hmm. Love that. Thanks, Mary.
No problem.
Naomi, you asked a question about having a business website utilized to build, and has it helped anyone that has one? I think you're on listening. Does anybody have a website outside of doTERRA, like a blog or anything that they have put in place? Naomi, I don't know if you can unmute yourself or type in whether you were looking like something to have your pit paste as the main focus or something that was more around your oils. I'm just really kind of in the baby process of rebuilding one myself, and mine was more or less to have a possible landing spot for somebody who might not find me on Instagram or find a closed Facebook group. But I really think that it depends on the audience that you're thinking might find it. Here you are.
Here. Yes, I was kind of thinking of, I don't know. I just feel I'm like not stuck, but I need some more ideas of how to grow. And I heard a lot today, which was awesome. But I was thinking of toying up doing a website just so people can go to link on, so I can, if they have interest, then I could send out something to them.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally
know. Just something new in my head.
Yeah. Think about your own shopping patterns, right? Like often if I'm trying to find information about a product, I will look for the website to go to, because you don't always know where to find the education group online or even where to find them on Instagram. So yeah, I think it's definitely worth exploring. And then just working with somebody who knows how to help you get that website into the right set of eyes.
Yeah, that was it. Yeah, basic. That answers it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to know if anybody had one and it worked well for them.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't think anybody's signed in on this particular group here.
All right. Thanks.
You're welcome. I think we touched on everything that got posted. But I would just, for those of you guys that are struggling with like really kind of creating that new leap into yourself being the leader of a team, is thinking about what drew you up to this point, to the upline that you follow or that you tap into, right? Or anything that was like tied to a buying decision. You probably followed or chose that person based on their confidence level, your trust that they will guide you in the right direction. And if you're starting to feel like you don't have anything brewing below you where people are wanting to follow, then take a real honest inventory of how visible and confident you're speaking to this potential group of people that could share, that you know where you're going. And a lot of times it's that like bridged number of weeks or a couple of months where you're like acting like the leader, like the business guru, and there's really nobody following yet. But oftentimes people have to sit back and watch and again build that trust. Like they built that trust in you to be the person that they would enroll with. And now it's like up leveling the trust that you model for people, that you are the person that can guide them in a business journey. But that's again why we have such an incredible support team of uplines and things that you can plug people into, because until you're at that position yourself where you want to take that on, there is always something to plug a new share or builder into. But I promise you that there is momentum waiting to happen for you when you decide to be that person, when you decide to just start having calls, which is so uncomfortable in the beginning, right? Thinking about being that person who hosts something. But you guys have it's been posted a lot lately, right? Where there's literally no excuse for somebody to not have success in this business, between the whole Fit Begin program, Empowered Success, everything that's laid out there, whether you want like lots of detail through Begin or lots of just basic, here are the steps through Empowered Success. Challenge yourself to see how comfortable you are explaining the process, right, of Begin or Empowered Success, and just say, hey, I am going to host a call for anybody who's a little bit interested in what I do. Oftentimes people don't know as much as we think that they should know about our journey, right? We think that we're visible as a business builder, but really ask yourself from the outside, does somebody really truly know what it is that I do? Oftentimes they don't, until you put it out there and offer them a space to join and come and listen. And if there's nobody to join a Zoom call, maybe you just start doing Facebook Lives, and maybe those Facebook Lives, there's nobody watching, but eventually somebody will. And again, the universe responds to the people that are showing up and growing and demonstrating that they are capable to accept somebody into this space. So really, again, take that inventory. Am I telling the universe that I am ready to take on somebody who says they're ready to do this business? Because it will for sure hold you back if you're still questioning your ability to lead somebody. And just be really, really, really conscious of the words that you're speaking in your head about your business, right? You may not be a grumbler, and you may not be somebody who's like complaining about what you don't have, but this stuff comes up, right? And sometimes you just don't even realize what's rising to the surface that is preventing you from accepting something good. And if you can shift your thinking and shift your language into just recognizing seasons of your business, and know that there will always be something in front of you, within your back office, within your customers, within your shares, somewhere for you to pour in love and be in action and motion. You just got to be receptive to like knowing what's going on and where you need to shift your time. And eventually you'll realize that things are just humming along and you're doing a little bit of all of it. And there's just so many seasons in this business, but you are the one that controls like how it all plays out, right? What's going on in your mind, what stories you're telling yourself, how much you're owning, making sure your cup is filled. I'm sure you guys have seen the post. It's been going around a couple of times where people give the analogy of, if you're holding a cup of coffee and somebody bumps into you, what spills out? It's coffee that spills out, right? Has anyone seen this post? A few people have shared it. So what are you like holding on to inside that if you get poked or bumped, what spills out first? You've probably been in this scenario with a spouse or a friend or a sibling. Like if you're holding in resentment or things that are driving you nuts, when you get poked a little bit too hard on a certain day, what comes out? It's like the stuff that you've been fired up and holding on to in a negative way. So the same thing happens when you guys are like plugged into listening to tequila falls out of my cup. Oh, that's good, Kaylee. When you guys are dialed into listening to positive stuff, reading positive stuff, training your Facebook feed to only show you positive stuff, like dial into what you need to see. You may not have time to really soak it in and like mull over what you're reading and hearing, but as long as that's what's flowing in more than the negative, when you get bumped or poked, it's the good that spills out, right? I promise you, if you guys really got committed to listening to a personal development podcast, like sticking with somebody, like find somebody that you resonate with. So maybe this manifestation babe is like what your jive is right now. You're like, I need to get my head around manifesting and accepting the good. So you listen to a ton of her stuff over the next couple of months. You won't be able to hold back from now hosting calls and jumping on a Facebook Live. Like you will feel compelled to start sharing with people your stories. And then this is when the train picks up speed and you've got people jumping on, because people want to join people that know where they're going.
I also found, Susan, quickly, doing Facebook Lives or posting videos definitely increases your following rather than just posting things about products. I used to do that a lot, just posting a picture of On Guard and this is what it's for. People scroll past that. If they see you on live or if they see you make a video, even something as simple as I ran out of hand soap, now I'm going to make a quick hand soap video in the bathroom, man, does that increase the amount of questions that you get and the amount of following that you get. People want to see your face. They don't want to see, a picture of something. So that really, really changed when I started doing those two.
Awesome. I'm so glad you brought that up. It's a different game right now than it was for those of us that started 4 years ago. We talked about this yesterday with some of you guys. 4 years ago or 3 years ago, if you got started in this business, you were probably the only oil person that people knew. So now it's like, how do we teach our new sharers and those of us who are still wanting to be in the game with enrolling? How do you set yourself apart? And you're so right. Capturing those, people want to see what's going on in your life, right? They want to see what your laundry room looks like. They want to sneak past, and you've got to be different than what everyone else is posting about. Thank you for sharing that. Awesome. Oh, thanks, Mary. Glad you're enjoying this. Okay, do you guys have any other questions since you're the ones on live? If there's anything that didn't get posted that you want to know about right now, we've got lots of experts on the call, people that got good, juicy things to share. Now's your time.
Okay, I have one.
Yeah.
Question. Okay, so I'm finding that I think it's maybe because I'm off work and I'm not used to all this time.
Mm-hmm.
So I find, and I was the same way in college because like I worked full time, I went to school full time and all the stuff. So how do you keep your mindset so positive when you find that you're slipping? Like, is it like, and like you were talking about like manifesting, like what do you do to manifest? You just like talk to yourself? Like I literally am clueless. I do, like Kaylee, like you sounded like you really knew how to do it. Like I just find that my mind is, it's easy. Like yesterday with all the heavy stuff happening in Toronto, like it's just so easy with being home all day for the next couple of weeks. Like how do I keep my mindset so positive all the time?
My biggest one, Susan, if you don't mind me saying something, my biggest thing that I've learned how to do is recognize my thoughts. I know this sounds really silly, but as soon as something comes in my mind, I recognize that it is negative, I release it, and then I immediately band-aid it with something positive. So for instance, you know, if I'm like, oh God, you know, a class got canceled, then I'll be like, okay, that was not a positive thought. How can I change this to a positive thought? So as soon as I started doing that, it's stupid in your mind at the time. You're like, it's like trying to meditate. When you're sitting there and you're trying to meditate and you're like, well, I'm thinking about how I'm supposed to meditate while I'm meditating. Stop. Not trying to meditate to think about anything about meditation. Like it really was like, oh my God, how am I doing this? But I find that you need to recognize your negative thoughts or actually recognize when you are slipping into that and be like, okay, I recognize that, and then do a full 180. That's what I have to do. I have to recognize it first, because if I just kind of let it go on, then it'll just keep going in that direction.
So when yeah, it's awesome. So when you're manifesting something good, you guys just like look in the mirror? Like I literally have no idea. I like sometimes I'll repeat it to myself in the car. I don't know if I'm doing it right.
Yeah, no, that's like, I mean, I have no idea how it happens either, but like sometimes if I feel like I need to write myself a love letter, I'll do it on my mirror so I can see it. But I try every single morning as soon as I wake up, instead of going right to my phone, I think to myself and I'll say it out loud. And my husband works nights, so he just falls asleep when I say it out loud. And he's like, oh, but I'm like, this is going to be a freaking awesome day. And I say that before my feet even hit the floor. It sounds so basic and silly, but it really does work, because it calluses your mind to put it in that frame of mind. And I also feel like if I'm starting to feel a little down, I have to listen to Tony. He's my jam.
Yeah, I like him too. Okay, thanks.
I was going to say the same thing. I know it sounds crazy, but talking out loud, saying it out loud, like I would walk around my house and just keep repeating the same things, because then your mind starts to believe it. Because even the month I hit diamond, it was like I've been platinum for so long, and the start of the new month came and I was like, okay, this is my month. Like I just felt it. And I would literally like walk around the house and be like, I'm hitting diamond this month. I'm hitting diamond. And I would tell my husband and whoever would listen to me, but I would literally walk around talking to myself and just saying all these positive things. And it's crazy, but it totally works.
It does.
And it just changes your mindset, right?
You're just
People might think you're crazy, but whatever. You got to do what you got to do.
Most people already think I'm crazy, so that's okay.
Lisa, I don't know if you're there, if you had to pop away, but I know you gave a double thumbs up when Mary was talking about something there. Do you want to chime in on your thoughts on this?
Sure. Okay, so I've done quite a bit of like reading and listening to people on not specifically manifesting, but like that whole topic. And one of like, so you said you don't know like how to actually do it. It's individual to each person and what like feels good for you. So like Kaylee with the love letter on the mirror, I think that's fantastic. And Jen saying how she just like walked around saying it, and Mary, how you said you repeated it to yourself. Those are all ways. It's basically to manifest, you need to believe that something is going to happen and that it's currently coming to you. So whatever puts that belief in your mind is the thing that you need to do to help manifest whatever it is you're looking for. So one of the things I do is I journal about it. And so I'll like write, one of the ways to do it is to write, I am so grateful that whatever you're trying to manifest is going to happen. So I am so grateful that by the end of this month or before, I will be such and such rank, or that every day I'm getting closer to meeting my new builder. My builder is already watching me and waiting, and soon they're going to present themselves. Things like that. Those are like kind of some of the things I write out to help me manifest that into my life. So I don't know if that helps for you, but that's my perspective on it.
Awesome. Thank you.
Love the wording on that. My new builder is already watching and waiting to present themselves.
Yeah.
If we only knew, right, how actually friggin' true that is, that people are watching us, right? They are just plain watching, waiting to see if this is the real deal. I don't think Ange Dodge can unmute herself or chime in, but I remember at the beginning of her journey, right? She put sticky notes on her wheel, the wheel of her car, right? Like think of the areas that you pass by a lot in your home or in your day-to-day, or if you drive and you're staring at your wheel, right? I had her make sticky notes about people being excited to hear what she had to teach. And you've got to like, you know, especially if you, whatever the doubt that's creeping into your mind, whatever that story is, put the opposite spin on it and write that out. I did a class at Jen Fowler's last year, and I went up to use her bathroom, and all over her mirror, she had these positive affirmations written with dry erase marker. So it's just, it sounds so silly and basic. And I totally remember being like, this is really weird. I did the same thing as you, Jen. I walked around my house saying, I am a diamond, I am a diamond, I am hitting diamond this month. So just that simple repetitiveness, there's not even an opportunity for the bad thought to creep in, right? Like you're dominating your thoughts. So, oh, you guys are wicked sharers. I love it.
And I don't watch the news. The news is meant to watch and take action. If you're not taking action, there's no point in watching. Just makes you sad.
Yeah, it's true. I'm the same. I have to be really, really protective of my brain. I remember my first mat leave before I had any of this good doTERRA stuff in my life. Like when you find yourself in those new environments where you've got free time, it's like the time gets into your head and it's really easy to get pulled to like all the what if scenarios. Like I remember I had never looked at my life before as being so fragile or so easily disrupted until I was sitting for hours rocking a baby, having like no doTERRA business. I'm like all the bad things that could possibly creep into your head, right? And it's there on the news and it is stuff that's happening in the world. And again, all we can control is how we show up with seeing the light or seeing the positive spin and just protecting what creeps in. Ever since I was a little kid, and I still do it, if I fall into bed and I have one of those random nights where like the bad stuff is brewing, I literally picture like the top of my head opening like a trunk and I visualize every bad thought flying out. Like totally did this as a kid. And then I shut it and I'm like, okay, all the bad is out. Like it's whatever silliness you can visualize or say it's Lisa said it, right? It's going to be different for all of us. Okay, well, we're over an hour, so thanks for hanging out, guys. Any last questions before we disconnect? No. Okay. Thank you guys so much for adding so much value to the call. Kaylee, Lisa, Jen, Mary, thanks for chiming in, and Naomi hopping on with your question. Love you guys, and this was a great call. So share it out with any of your team that you think would love to hear the topics. And right away, go look for Manifestation Babe. She's got a Facebook group. She's got a podcast. Somebody just told me she's got an ebook too. So if this is like where you're feeling pulled to start diving a little bit more into your journey, then check her out. Let me know what you think. Have an awesome afternoon, guys. Bye.